One evening, as Nanya returned home from yet another secret rendezvous with Nonso, she found Uzoma waiting for her in the living room. His face was unreadable, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice calm but cold. Nanya froze, her mind racing as she tried to come up with an excuse. But for the first time, she couldn't. The weight of her lies, her betrayal, it was all too much. She felt the walls closing in around her. She stammered, unable to meet his gaze. "Don't lie to me, Nanya," Uzoma said, his voice rising. "I know." Nanya's heart dropped. "Know what?" "About Nonso." Her world shattered in that moment. The secret she had fought so hard to keep had been exposed, and now there was no going back. How did you find out?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Uzoma's eyes were filled with hurt and anger. "I saw the messages. I know everything." Nanya's knees buckled, and she sank onto the couch, her mind spinning. This was it, the moment she had feared, the moment where everything came crashing down. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen." Uzoma stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of pain. "How long?" 6 months, Nanya admitted, her voice barely audible. Uzoma let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. "I'm sorry," Nanya repeated, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Uzoma said, his voice hardening. "And now, I don't know if we can ever come back from this." Nanya's heart broke as she realized the gravity of what she had done. She had destroyed the one thing she had promised to protect, their marriage. And now she didn't know if it could ever be repaired. The days following the revelation were a blur of pain and regret. Uzoma moved out of the house, leaving Nanya alone with her guilt and shame. She had lost everything: her marriage, her sense of self, her happiness. And for what? A fleeting thrill? A momentary escape from reality? Nonso reached out, but Nanya ignored his calls. She couldn't face him. She couldn't face anyone. She was lost in a sea of her own making, drowning in the consequences of her choices. Weeks passed, and Nanya fell into a deep depression. The once vibrant, confident woman was now a shadow of her former self. She had betrayed the man who loved her, and in doing so, she had lost herself. It took months, but eventually, Nanya found the strength to pick herself up. She sought therapy, determined to understand the root of her addiction and the reasons behind her actions. It wasn't an easy journey, but slowly she began to heal. Uzoma, too, sought his own path to healing. They remained separated, but as time passed, the anger and hurt began to fade, replaced by a quiet understanding. They had both been broken, but in different ways. Nanya reached out to Uzoma one day, asking for a chance to talk. He agreed. Nanya sat in a small cafe on the edge of town, her fingers nervously tapping on the wooden table. It had been several months since the devastating revelation of her infidelity, and in that time, she had undergone significant changes. Therapy had helped her confront her addiction and the emotional scars she had accumulated over the years. But today was different. Today, she would face Uzoma again. The bell above the cafe door jingled, drawing her attention. Uzoma walked in, his presence still commanding despite the weariness etched on his face. He looked around until his eyes met hers, and they exchanged a tentative smile, a fragile truce that signified their shared pain and the hope of rebuilding something precious. "Thank you for coming," Nanya said softly as he took a seat across from her. She was surprised to see him dressed in a casual white shirt and jeans, a departure from his usual formal attire. "Thank you for inviting me," he replied, his voice steady but laced with unresolved tension. "How have you been?" Nanya took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I've been working on myself. Therapy has been eye-opening. I've realized how much I need to understand why I did what I did. Uzoma nodded, his expression unreadable. I'm glad to hear that. It's important to confront these issues. I know I hurt you deeply, she continued, her heart pounding. I can't change what happened, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. I never wanted to betray your trust. Uzoma looked away for a moment, taking a sip of his coffee. Trust is fragile, Nanya. You can't just apologize and expect everything to be fine. I understand, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. I know that I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Silence hung between them, heavy with the weight of their shared history. Nanya noticed how Uzoma's fingers fidgeted with his coffee cup, a sign of his own internal struggle. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap that had grown between them, but she also knew that this conversation needed to unfold at its own pace. I've been doing a lot of thinking too, Uzoma said, finally meeting her gaze. About us, about our marriage. I loved you, Nanya. I still do. But that doesn't erase the hurt. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I can't expect you to forgive me right away. I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I don't want to lose you. Uzoma's expression softened slightly, but the pain in his eyes remained. It's not just about you. I've been hurting, too. You shattered my trust, and now I'm left picking up the pieces. Nanya nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I realize that. I want to help you heal, too. Maybe we can figure this out together, even if it's one step at a time. He sighed. You say you want to work on this, but actions speak louder than words. What are you willing to do? Nanya hesitated, contemplating her next move. I'll go to counseling, and I'll be honest with you about everything. No more secrets. I'll share my progress with you, and I'll give you space when you need it. I want us to communicate openly. Uzoma studied her for a long moment, his expression shifting as he weighed her sincerity. Communication is key, and I appreciate that you want to be transparent. But I need time to process everything. I understand, Nanya replied, feeling a glimmer of hope. Just know that I'm here for you, no matter what. As the conversation continued, they began to delve into the deeper issues that had plagued their relationship. Nanya opened up about her struggles with intimacy and how her addiction had stemmed from a desire for validation. Uzoma listened, his eyes reflecting a mix of empathy and skepticism. I want you to know that I'm not expecting us to be back to normal overnight, Nanya said, her heart racing. But I believe we can heal together. Uzoma nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. I want to believe that too. Over the next few months, Nanya and Uzoma embarked on a journey of rebuilding their relationship. They met regularly, sometimes in therapy sessions, other times in informal settings where they could simply talk. They shared their thoughts, fears, and hopes, slowly mending the broken pieces of their connection. Nanya worked diligently on herself, attending therapy sessions focused on her addiction and learning healthier coping mechanisms. She discovered new ways to express herself and found fulfillment in activities that didn't involve seeking validation from others. Uzoma, too, attended sessions, learning to process his emotions and the hurt he had experienced. He opened up about his feelings of inadequacy and betrayal, allowing Nanya to see the raw vulnerability beneath his stoic exterior. As they navigated their healing journey, they learned to celebrate small victories together. They cooked dinner on weekends, took long walks, and shared stories that made them laugh. The more time they spent together, the more they began to rediscover the connection they had once cherished. But the road to recovery wasn't without its challenges. On particularly difficult days, Nanya found herself grappling with moments of self-doubt. She worried that her past would always loom over them, casting shadows on their future. One evening, After a particularly emotional therapy session, Nanya opened up to Uzoma about her fears. "What if I never fully earn your trust back?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I always feel like I'm walking on eggshells?" Uzoma took her hands in his, squeezing gently. "We're both on this journey together. There will be setbacks, but we need to remember that healing takes time. What matters is that we're committed to each other. If you can believe that," Nanya replied, a hint of a smile breaking through her tears, "then maybe I can too." Just as they were beginning to feel hopeful about their relationship, a new challenge arose. Nonso resurfaced, unexpectedly reaching out to Nanya, stirring up memories and feelings that she had fought hard to bury. "I miss you, Nanya. I can't stop thinking about you. Let's meet." Nanya stared at the message, her heart racing. She had thought she had put that chapter behind her, but the remnants of their passion lingered in the back of her mind. It was a dangerous temptation, and she knew she had to handle it carefully. Uzoma noticed the change in her demeanor. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "It's Nonso," Nanya confessed, her voice trembling. "He reached out. He wants to meet." Uzoma's expression hardened, and she could see the familiar pain flash in his eyes. "What do you want to do?" Nanya took a deep breath, her mind racing. "I don't want to see him. I know that seeing him would only open old wounds. But part of me wonders if I owe it to myself to face my past." Uzoma leaned back, crossing his arms. "You need to decide what you truly want. If meeting him will help you find closure, then do it. But understand that it could bring complications." "I don't want to hurt you again," she replied, her heart heavy. "You've been so patient with me, and I don't want to risk everything we've worked for. If you believe that meeting him will give you clarity, then go," Uzoma said, his voice steady. "But you need to be honest with yourself about your feelings." As the days passed, Nanya grappled with her decision. Ultimately, she chose to meet Nonso, driven by a desire to confront her past and find closure. She texted him back, agreeing to meet at a cafe they used to frequent. The cafe was bustling when Nanya arrived, her heart racing as she spotted Nonso at a corner table. He looked exactly as she remembered, charismatic, with a magnetic aura that drew people in. But as she approached, she felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. "Hey," he said, a charming smile lighting up his face. "I'm glad you came." "Thanks for reaching out," Nanya replied, trying to sound casual despite her nerves. "I thought it was important to talk." Nonso leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "I've missed you, Nanya. Things have felt empty without you." Nanya swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. "I've been working on myself, Nonso. I've made mistakes, and I'm trying to repair my marriage." Nonso's expression shifted, his gaze sharp. "You think he's enough for you? That you can just erase what we had?" "It's not about erasing anything," Nanya replied, feeling the tension rise. "It's about recognizing that I need to be accountable for my actions and heal from my past." Nonso's eyes darkened with frustration. "You still want me, don't you? I can give you everything you need." Nanya felt the weight of Nonso's words pressing against her, but she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "What we had wasn't real, Nonso. It was an escape, a distraction from what I was too afraid to confront in myself. I'm not that woman anymore." Nonso leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You say that, but I know you. I saw the fire in you. Uzoma can't give you what I can." The intensity of his gaze stirred something within her, but it wasn't desire, it was resolve. She had spent months working through her issues, uncovering the reasons behind her infidelity and her cravings for validation. She now saw Nonso for what he truly represented, a destructive force that had only magnified her insecurities. "I'm not here to relive the past, Nonso," she said, her voice calm but firm. I'm here to end it. I need closure, and I need to move on. We both do. Nonso's face twisted with anger, his charm slipping for the first time. So, that's it? You think you can just walk away from me? After everything we've shared? Nanya held her ground. Yes, I can. And I'm choosing to. I'm choosing my marriage, my growth, and my future. What we had was toxic, and I won't go back to that. Nonso stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor as he loomed over her. You'll regret this, Nanya. You'll come crawling back to me when you realize you can't be satisfied with him. She didn't flinch. Maybe I will have regrets, but they won't be about you. Goodbye, Nonso. Without another word, Nanya turned and walked out of the cafe, her heart pounding but her mind clear. She had faced her past head-on and refused to let it control her any longer. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. When Nanya returned home, Uzoma was waiting for her in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly together. His face was tense, but there was a quiet strength in his posture. How did it go? He asked, his voice calm but cautious. Nanya sat down across from him, feeling the weight of the moment. It's over, Uzoma. I met with him to get closure, and I realized that whatever I thought I felt for him was never real. It was just me running from my own problems. Uzoma nodded slowly, his eyes searching hers for the truth. Do you still feel tempted? Even now? Nanya thought about it carefully. No, she said firmly. For the first time, I feel free from all of it. From him, from my past mistakes, from the addiction. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I know I have a long way to go. But I'm committed to us. Uzoma exhaled, a mixture of relief and wariness crossing his face. I want to believe that, Nanya. I really do. But trust doesn't come back overnight. I know, she said softly, her heart heavy with the understanding that their path forward wouldn't be easy. I don't expect it to. I just want you to know that I'm willing to do the work, no matter how long it takes. Uzoma stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. We'll take it one step at a time. Over the following months, their relationship continued to heal slowly. They worked through their issues in therapy, addressing not only Nanya's betrayal, but also the cracks that had formed in their marriage long before Nonso had come into the picture. Uzoma learned to express his own vulnerabilities, admitting that his stoic exterior had often made Nanya feel disconnected from him. In turn, Nanya worked on regaining his trust by being open, honest, and transparent about her feelings. A year passed, and though the scars of their past still lingered, Nanya and Uzoma had built something new together, something stronger. They had learned to communicate in ways they never had before, and their bond had deepened through the pain they had endured. One evening, as they sat together on their balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and pink, Nanya turned to Uzoma with a smile. Do you ever think we'll get back to what we once were? She asked, her voice soft but curious. Uzoma chuckled, shaking his head. No, I don't think we ever will. Her smile faltered slightly, but before she could respond, he took her hand, squeezing it gently. And that's a good thing, he continued, his eyes warm and full of affection. We were living in a fantasy before, pretending everything was perfect. But now we're real. We've been through hell and back, but we're stronger for it. Nanya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, of gratitude. You're right. We are stronger. Uzoma leaned in, kissing her gently on the forehead. We've made it through the worst. Now, it's time to start building the life we always wanted. They sat together in the fading light, their hearts full of hope for the future. Nanya knew that their journey wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace, confident that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Years passed, and Nanya and Uzoma's marriage continued to grow and evolve. They welcomed a child into their lives, a daughter who brought them immeasurable joy and solidified the foundation they had worked so hard to rebuild. Nanya no longer felt the pull of her old addiction. The woman who had once sought validation in dangerous places had transformed into someone who found strength in herself and in her family. She had reclaimed her life, her marriage, and her sense of self. Though the road had been long and fraught with pain, Nanya had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. She had faced her demons, owned her mistakes, and found redemption in the love she had fought so hard to rebuild. In the end, it wasn't the perfection of her marriage that brought her happiness. It was the imperfection, the realness, the rawness of the life she and Uzoma had created together. A life grounded in truth, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment.